This is the Product Innovation Show with your guest host, Sergey Ross. Usually Aram runs these, but it's me today. And not just me, I have Chief Product Officer from StoryTap here, Sean Braacx, who joins me from Vancouver. Sean was in product for a really long time, since 2004, according to his LinkedIn. And he's also an accidental full stack developer, as he calls himself. And what StoryTap does, they basically help enterprise brands give their customers a voice by sharing personalized video stories to increase brand engagement and conversions. Sean, thank you for coming. I'm excited about this one.
No, thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk with you.
Accidental full stack developer. We got to start with this one. How did that happen?
That's a good question. I think my career was mainly in product management. Got into some product design, and I think I just got more and more curious about how the product was actually built and wanted to get my hands into it. But it really started when I started my first business, Wise Learning. I was looking at hiring a developer, and I couldn't find the right person at the right cost. And I thought, well, I could probably learn this too. And so that's kind of how I got my hands dirty. And kept learning technology, and that was in PHP. Did some Swift apps for iOS, now JavaScript, and I do more developing now than product. So it's been kind of a switch. I fell into that, like I said, accidentally, but it's been a really fun transition.
What was do you remember still the day of you actually going on launching that course or trying to code? Do you still remember the trigger? Like, that's it, I'm doing it.
That's a good question. I feel like I said, it was a slippery slope, because before this, I started playing around with WordPress, which, is kind of like the gateway drug into web development, because it's really easy. You can make changes. You start with, some HTML, some CSS. There's a little bit of JavaScript. You break a plugin, trying to add some sort of feature. And so that was kind of like me learning a little bit. I think one of the key things with web development is there's so many things to learn. You're never going to know it all at once. Databases, hosting, DevOps,
Absolutely.
all that kind of stuff. So I feel like there's so many black boxes around you. You kind of come in and you're like, okay, I'm just going to learn this. And then you start learning more and more and more and unblocking those black boxes. And that's still happening for me today when, I'm thinking about some really complex functions. It's like, well, I've kind of understood how that works, but now I understand it further. So with web and with technology in general, you just need enough to grok it, right? It's like, I get it enough that I can make it work, and then I will learn more as I need.
How did the whole, you started working with the code, how did the whole relationship with the engineers change as a PM? Because I think that's like the big benefit that you get.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the like me becoming more and more involved in technology, I think as a PM, this was near the end of my time at Quick Mobile, and it gives you a bit more empathy for what they're working on and understanding the challenges that technology faces. It's like that feature might be really quick, but it seems complex, and on the other hand, it could be a really seemingly easy thing that you're like, actually, that's going to be a huge pain in the butt. Like, I have things like that are on my backlog right now that is like, I'd love to do that, and it seems simple, but that's like, because of the way the database is structured or whatever it might be, it's very difficult. So I think it builds that empathy for sure.
And I think you had a story of, was it an argument with the developer? Like this is how, about the feature that you tried yourself?
I'm trying to remember.
Was there one? Or maybe I'm just butchering it, from our previous conversation. When you're in a debate with a developer, does something come up with hey, we can't do this, or this will take that amount of time? You're like, that can't be true. I know exactly how much time it takes.
Yeah, I think it definitely allows you to cut through sandbagging as well. But also sometimes it's not a developer being purposely sandbagging or spiteful, but it's maybe not clearly defining the requirements or defining them in a specific way where the developer's like, well, if you want me to build this in that way, yes, it will take a week, but if I understood the requirements better in that you actually needed it not quite like that, it could have been done in a little bit of a different way. Yeah, I could solve it like this in a day or an hour. So having both the product and the technical mindset and bringing those together, it allows you to really think about the solutions in a more creative way sometimes.
And for a product person, like the purpose pretty much is to translate the technical into the customer and vice versa. So like if you don't really know the fundamentals of the code, which is the technical part, then by definition you have to rely on the interpretation of the developer, which becomes overcomplicated, over-engineered by default.
Yeah, I think it does a few things. For one, as you understand technology better, it allows you to better understand like what you can do with it. So if a customer is saying, hey, I'd love to be able to do this, like, well, this can be done, or hey, there's this new thing coming that we can now take advantage of. So you can leverage new things potentially. You can also be aware of, like I said, challenges where it's like, hey, this is gonna be really hard. Or if you, again, take that product mindset, when you're building a database, and I'll give you kind of like a practical example. And it's like,
right,
well, we know we're going to need to pull some data from this new feature we're building. And so we need to do some logging to make sure that the feature is working and all that. But if you know the kind of data ahead of time, like this is the kind of thing that I think I would be wanting to know about this feature, you're going to design it and architecture it differently. So there's that synergy again between product and technology coming together. And so if you can understand the product as a developer and you can understand the technology as a product person, you're going to be able to make sure that those things sync up and you build better things at the start. Because the challenge is building code takes a long time. It's the most expensive part of a feature.
Absolutely.
Like you can design things that's really easily, right, mock them up, but actually building it and then unfortunately having to change it is really costly. So the closer you can get to being what you need upfront is gonna save you tons of time and money, which is the whole challenge of a startup.
How hard it is to resist for you to start jumping into building something when you know how to code?
That's a good question. I think that's where that ruthless prioritization and being able to put on like your high level hat is important. There is this danger of, well, we could just go build it. Let's just go build lots of things. But you need to really, really like ask yourself, like, what is the most valuable thing I can work on today, or the most valuable thing our team can work on today? And that's going to adjust as the company's vision and the company's priorities change. So there is this constant like rejigging of like, okay, well, this, given some new contracts we've got or whatever that might be, this actually needs to take priority, even though we really want to work on this because it's cool and it'll be fun and it'll look great for whatever purpose. It's like, no, we need to focus on this. So I think that ruthless prioritization and reevaluating of your priorities is so important.
What would you say to product managers, product directors who want to be better on the technical side? Do they take courses? Do they try to build something? Like, what would be something they could do to actually like get a head start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I learn by doing. I don't love taking courses. So it really depends on how you learn. But for me, it's really been, again, that whole think about. There's going to be tons of stuff you don't know about technology. Uncovering little bits at a time. It's like, okay, well, that's a black box to me. That's a black box to me. I don't understand how this works. It's like taking the most important one, maybe the simplest one, uncovering it, learning about it. That might be working with your engineers to kind of like say like, hey, like I'd love to learn a little bit more about this. And I think you want to encourage that sort of mindset on your team. I know I have worked on teams where I was told, stick to your knitting. Don't go like I wanted to dig into some of the code. It's like, no, don't worry about that. It's like, but there is such a value in learning that. Like we talk about the kind of T structure of expertise. So
right,
being very wide and being deep in one area. But the wider that you're gonna have that experience, the better it is to understand. You're gonna have empathy on like how an engineer works, the challenges they have. And so the more you understand about what they're working on, it doesn't mean you can necessarily do their job and you can't, but it is going to give you a better understanding of what you can do, the challenges they face, that sort of thing.
So you feel just go do something versus actually spend time on courses, by and large?
There are some, like I think there can be some helpful courses, but again, the unique challenges, the way that your system is built is going to be different than others. And so if you can apply that quickly to a practical problem, like again, for me, I love learning things that are practical. So
Right.
the things that I learned for my first startup and here at StoryTap, and I probably will keep learning, are going to be things that apply to things I'm working on. And it's like, okay, I do this and I got that result, rather than, well, I did this course and I understand it theoretically, but like I don't know how I'm going to translate that to a real solution necessarily.
So in Quick Mobile, you had, what was it, 60 engineers or 60 people and no product manager. Like how does that function? I'm just like, I can't imagine that.
So I came in. I think part of that is just when you grow rapidly as a company, sometimes it's just kind of like all hands on deck getting things done. And so the product was an app for conferences and events. You would, especially for big enterprises. So they're going to have a big event. They need an app that's customized for them. They have this, product that gets customized per company or per brand per event. But you got to remember, this is like kind of earlier days of mobile. So you've got your Android, you got your iOS.
2006, right? 2005, 2006?
No, this is a little newer. Sorry, this is what was it? So this is 2011, 20.
Okay, so not super late.
So not,
early.
well, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, being able to develop on one platform or develop one code base and distribute to multiple platforms, that was still fairly nascent. So you've got iOS, you got Android, there's web, there was, I think, Windows Phone. I think we might even been doing some things like that. So keeping all those products aligned is challenging. And as a product manager, you do want some parity between those platforms. Obviously, understanding that each of them is a little bit different, especially as you get more into like camera and other sorts of features like that. So it was a lot of like kind of corralling. It's like, okay, like what are we doing? What like how does this even work? Just understanding the product. So a lot of it was really like that fact finding, trying to figure that out, trying to align them and get an idea of where you're at. So then you can define and say like, this is where we want to go. Because if you don't even know where you're at, you can't really set a clear roadmap for where you're going.
And you were the first PM there.
I was, yes.
And so you joined. There's got to be some mayhem going on, pretty standard for that kind of setup. What do you do after that? What do you like? What do you like? How do you go about your role?
Yeah. So I remember a lot of it was both trying to figure out, okay, like how does this product work? So you're in the product, you're trying it out, which is like the most important thing as a product person, to understand your product deeply on the different platforms, documenting weird things, nuances, bugs, that sort of thing. But then also ensuring that there's clear communication about how the product works. So one of the big things that I actually pushed was Confluence. So this is not saying I advocate for Confluence specifically, but at that time it was the wiki solution that I went with, and it was like, rather than emails and Excel sheets, it's like that is where the product documentation lives. And anytime sales or marketing or anybody asks for product information, send you the product link. So I'm always I'll send you the link. You ask me for anything, I will email it, but it's always gonna be the link to this. So it's like, this is the latest X. So everybody's on the same page. And that's the key thing with a growing organization where it's being sold, sales, and they have a big sales team. They're actively selling to lots of different people. They need to make sure that what they're selling is accurate. It's what actually exists. So I think it was figuring it out myself, documenting that, and then sharing that so that everybody in the company was aligned on what we actually had and then where we're going.
Mm. You also built an app for parents from scratch. What was that experience about? Like how did that whole thing happen? Because that's a lot of steps to take.
Yeah, so I knew that entrepreneurship was always something that was like in my blood. I had done some little, kind of startup things in high school, and I just had that. The first company I worked for 7 years was a startup. Really, I was probably employee 20, and it went to about 150. So seeing that kind of growth, that sort of like ability to have a vision, to push something forward, I really loved that, and so I knew that was going to come. And so my first startup was called Wise Learning. This was in early 2013. Just had my first son and thought, that's the best time to quit your job and do a startup. But I've been doing a lot of reading about how children's minds work, how they develop, some of the challenges that have been, coming about with technology, but then also some of the things that we can see as solutions. And so the thing that I wanted to do was help parents build social skills, social emotional skills. and using technology as a catalyst, not as a replacement. So it's not like, here, go play this app and you'll come away more social. These are things you can do together. So using technology as that facilitator. I knew that I wanted to use iPads because this was 2013. So, people are starting to get iPads in the house.
It took off massively right at that time.
Yeah, and so it was a good platform to start on. I built it as a web app, partially because I just didn't know how to code, native apps, and it was a good way to be able to iterate really quickly, because with native apps, there's especially on iPad, like the approval timelines are quite slow. So that was an amazing experience of learning both how to run a startup, how to build and design and get feedback. So it's like getting parents in, like I would go to coffee shops, I would pull every parent I could, get them on, watch them using it, get that feedback, so that there's that continual iteration and trying to really do that constant customer discovery. I think the hardest challenge I had there was CEO hat, which is like running the business, thinking about vision, how do you do things strategically, and then developer hat, which is like, I want to build cool features. I think I definitely could fall into the trap of like building more than I needed. There was definitely things I built that I was like, well, we didn't need that, or didn't use that, where I think I've taken a lot of the things that I learned there, the pain, and applied that in StoryTap so we don't make the same mistakes twice.
What was do you remember the most awkward customer discovery session when you're showing parents something in the app and like, what is this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest disconnects you always have is like, you talk to parent, you kind of explain something like, oh, I totally use it. And then like you launch it and you give them the link, they're like, crickets. Like, why are you not using it? And what you learn is that there is a big disconnect between what people think they will do, what they kind of aspirational self. It's like, you ask me, it's like, Sean, like, how many times are you going to work out this week? Oh, I'll go like 3 runs. It's like, am I going to? Maybe not. So there is a difference between what people think and what people, say like, yeah, I would use, and then the actual behavior. And that's why one of the key challenges with product development, especially in a startup when you're in these early stages, is how can you, as quickly as possible, validate that hypothesis? So you've got this customer discovery, but then it's like, how do you validate that without building the whole code out? So some of these no coding apps and doing wireframes that are clickable and whatever it is like, what can I do to show that there is something really here that people will use? Because usage is like the key thing. If you've got usage,
right,
like everything else will come.
I was going to say, what did you do with an MVP sort of thing? Like, how did you approach that exact part?
Yeah, so it started with really talking to parents, right? So there's lots of like, how do you do this? Do you worry about this? How do you use this device right now? How do you do this right now? So that's one of the things. The other thing that you really figure out is there's a difference between like they call a vitamin and a painkiller, right? A vitamin's like, it's nice, I'll take, that will help, but it's something that I'm going to see the benefit of in a long run. Whereas like painkillers, like, this hurts right now. And it's very interesting because the parents who found wise learning the most valuable were parents who had children with autism, because it was social development wasn't a long-term like, yeah, I can see that being something I want to work on. It was like, this is something we really need right now. And so it was very interesting talking to those parents because they were much more engaged. Like, I would have hour-long conversations with some of these parents, like talking about the challenges and how they're doing things and their resources. And it was fascinating because those were like such rich times. But as I look back, it's like, those are the people that you need to go to for your early product learning. It's like, who are the people who are like, this is such a pain that I've done something about it already. Those are the people who are going to use your product, not the people who think like that's kind of nice.
I was interviewing one founder a couple of months before, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, like, you want to build products for people who are actually searching for a solution, not for somebody who's like, oh, that might be cool. They're already like trying to figure out how to do something, because that's like some people say it's a 10x of the current solution, or maybe it doesn't exist on the market, like in your case.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly it. And if I think about solutions like StoryTap, it's interesting because again, it's this new thing. It's people aren't searching for like scalable video content for enterprise solutions. It's and some people have. One of our customers, they actually were flying videographers across the country getting videos from
Sean,
their customers.
Before you jump in, why don't you just, in your words, tell us what StoryTap does Because I mean, I did a high level, but you would do it much better.
Totally. Yeah. So StoryTap helps enterprise brands. These are large organizations collect video stories from their customers, their staff, that they then use to help promote their product, essentially. So that comes in a few flavors. There's video reviews, there's Q&A video. So customer, like rather than sending people to a text, page that answers their question, having video, we're finding that it's driving down call volume for help desks. And then even really interesting stories. So things like UCLA is using it for kidney donor stories, or, talking about the experience of an MBA grad. So collecting those, and the key thing is these are prompted in the sense that we guide the story through prompts, but we don't tell them what to say, so that there's still this unique flavor that comes out. So it's very watchable, it's very human, but it's not too long, it's not rambling, that sort of thing.
And you solve that big thing of consent part, right? You have a seamless experience for a company and for the end person, because I think consent sometimes comes into play where could you use that video and the rights conversation.
Totally. Yeah. So what we want is the people who record to feel very confident. So it's a white labeled experience. It's in the brand that they know. They get to watch their video. It's very clear when they share it that they're giving consent to the brand. And then on the brand side, they own the video content, but it's also reviewed. So we have a mix of human and technology that reviews the content to make sure that it not only is good and can be shared on the internet, but it also meets their requirements, whether there's legal restrictions on health claims or whatever that might be.
Yeah, and you recently got 2.3 million or close to $3 million round. It was a seed round, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
What are you planning doing from here? Like, what does it look like from the product perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we did is we bootstrapped till we got to a point where we figured out product market fit. That was, that's always a really challenging thing. And right. It's this grind of pushing, trying to figure out we've got this thing that people are using, but it's who most, and again, this comes back to our original point, is who needs this the most, who is willing to pay for this, and then how do we find more of those customers and develop that market, but then also extend the product out so that there's more opportunities, there's more customers you can reach. And so we reached this point where we were growing really quickly, and we said we want to keep this growth up. And through the funding, it's going to help us do a few things. One is obviously expand sales and marketing, which is right. something that you do to grow, especially in a large B2B enterprise product. But then also extending the product so that it meets the requirements that they have, but just staying ahead. It's what are right. those things we can do so that this product is something that they're I cannot live without.
Yeah, and you also, as a matter of fact, and we didn't cover that, you initially started as B2C.
Yes.
What made you? What was the moment you actually went to B2B? What was that? How did that transition pivot happen?
So we talked about this a little bit last time, but
yes.
The core technology was designed so that anyone, your grandma, your grandpa, could use this to tell a story. So telling story on video is the core of what our technology is, and it's still the core of what we do today, because we believe that story is human. It's that thing that connects us all, and video is the best medium right now to share that, especially as so many people are online. So that's the thing that we've stuck true to, and I think it's really helped us, because what we wanted to do is make the easiest solution that anybody can use to tell a great story. And we're really proud of the output. 90+% of the videos that come back are really usable, really watchable, and just really neat. And so we're super proud of that. And I think that start really helped get to where we are today. The pivot came because though there was lots of interest, we had more people coming to us and say we like that, but can we use it for our business? And that was one of those moments where yes, yeah, there's really clear market feedback coming back that this could do very well as a B2B product.
What was the reason, Sean? Bootstrapping is a bit of a nightmare in a way, especially for when you try to scale. If you're trying to scale your platform, you try to scale your product. What was the reason for you to actually stay bootstrapped for such a long time versus taking a little bit of capital and trying to grow it a little faster?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is, as a B2B company, it's easier to bootstrap because each customer you get can give you a significant amount of runway versus B2C product where it's like the amount of revenue and the amount of customers you need before you can actually like sustain your team is quite different. So it was possible. Two was, I would say, so my co-founder is a female, and raising money as a female is different. What we've learned going through Techstars and doing a lot of, just research on this and live, like I've been part of these VC discussions, is you are judged not based on what you say you're going to do, but what you've done. So there's a different level of kind of like expectation, which is quite interesting. So part of that's just been out of necessity based on our company, based on, who we are. It's like we've had to bootstrap, but it's forced us to be really wise with capital and to really be tenacious in how we grow. We've had some crazy stories about, getting close to running out of money, but making it happen. And those have really empowered us so that now that we've raised money, we are doing it out of a position of strength and with investors that we really believe in.
Sean, what was something that I haven't asked you that you wish I did in this interview? Could be anything, product-wise, product-related, could be a fundraise, could be something on vision or something on your customer stories. You could pick pretty much any area. Or maybe final message you'd like to leave your audience with, or our audience with.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we've been talking about a lot of different things, but at the core of product, it's you're building a solution for people, right? So the technology just serves that. And I think what we want to do is think about, like, as a product person, what are the things that I can do to ensure that I'm making the best thing for people? And so that's staying connected to your customers, staying connected to your sales team, that kind of thing, but then also understanding your technology team better and getting them to the point, ideally, and it depends on the size of your organization, and that they can be advocates. They can understand, like on our tech team, all the developers, they understand, they think from a product mindset, and it really, really helps because we're all thinking together, like not just take this ticket, build it. It's how do I make this a better solution? How do I think strategically, creatively, because they understand the technology better than I ever will, but about how I can make this a better product for our customers.
Where do you, I was going to ask you, Sean, where do you stand on the Steve Jobs theory of customers don't know what they want until I show them?
That's a good question. So I've heard a lot of people compare themselves to Steve Jobs, but not many people are. He was a unique visionary with both, he understood the technology, but he was a genius product marketer. Like, if you think about what Apple does, is I was just looking at their webpage for the iPhone 13, and it's like this mass, like it was, if you look at that one page, it's got videos and just the amount of information, but they take really technical things like nits. Like, who knew what a nit was? Well, Apple is able to sell you on the fact that you need more nits, right? Like, they are geniuses at that. So there's something there. And I do agree, like, especially for innovative products, there is something about, like, people don't know that, but educating a market is a very, very long and costly process that I think is really easy to understate. Like, I have no competition is actually not always a good thing, because it means that, well, nobody is looking for this. So like you said, you want to find that solution that people are looking for, but if nobody's looking for it, well, you're going to be spending a lot of time trying to drive demand.
That's right.
I think that there is a balance, and there's ways to kind of bridge that gap, but I don't think that's where most people are.
An off-topic point, but I wanted to bring it up since you talked about the new iPhone. If on their product page they emphasize this massive camera bump, this huge lenses, and if we were to go back to when they actually announced iPhone 6, they were trying to hide the bump. That was the first time iPhone had a bump, and they were trying very hard in their product marketing to not show it because it looked ugly. And now, a couple of years later, look where we are.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that adjustment is people were not upgrading their iPhones as much. No, I'm not an expert on the market or anything, but from my perspective, people were not upgrading. I think I had my iPhone 7 for 4 years. But one of the big factors that caused me to upgrade was the camera. So we're not really carrying around phones anymore. We're carrying around cameras that have
Absolutely.
a computer, and they happen to make phone calls that you may or may not use. So that I think as you see them, like even with the iPhone 13, I was like amazed at how much more. Like the focus was 95% of the camera.
Yeah, and they made a massive jump forward. But we'll probably stop here because that would be an iPhone episode. Sean, but thank you so much for coming. Real appreciate your insights, your stories. This was fun.
Thank you. It's great. I come with a little bit of a different lens because I do develop and do product. And I think that, like, again, like I said, at the core of it is like as a product person, it's like, how do I build technology products that meet a need? And sometimes that means like things that people aren't aware of, but the only way you're going to do that is if you're tight, like the product, the market, who's using it, you're hearing that feedback. Like for years, I dealt with intercom, like our customers messaging us in the intercom, and our end users. And I would judge the success of our product or front-end UI, but like how many, out of every 100 videos, how many people ask me a question? If I can get that down to like, one out of every few hundred videos, I feel like we're doing really well, because that means that hundreds and hundreds of people are going through and just being like, I can do this. And this is a very diverse group, right? You've got people doing wax strips reviews and MBA reviews and kidney donor stories. And it's like, so if you can do that really well, and keep connected. Like I think Steve Blank, the guy who did this, he was talking, I don't know if he's doing anything, but when his book came out and he's talking about customer discovery, he said like that first company he was at with the CEO, they're out selling. Then the next company, the CEO sat in his office and they totally got disconnected because they didn't keep their ear to the ground of like what people actually want. And it's easy to do. So staying connected to what people want, and what you can do. I mean,
I think it's a bit unfortunate because I think a lot of times companies try to they probably get a little bit arrogant. If things have been working well, they're like, it's going to work well. They keep their marketing away from customers too, and everybody suffers because like you can't engineer something you don't know. And humans are so inherently complicated in their behavior. And like you said, you'd never imagine what they will do with your product or with how they will react to marketing the same way. Like a product is more complicated, I would argue. So like, how do you know? You can't. There's so many combinations.
That's exactly it. And I think knowing the technology, so that's the other gap that we talked about. The knowing the technology is so important because even today I was talking to one of our developers who's working on this really technical video thing, and it's really awesome. And he's like, "Hey Sean, did you know we can do this and this?" And so I was thinking about it because this could be an additional feature that we charge for, and this could be something that we check for. And you're like, amazing. So if you bringing together product mindset, which is like building an awesome solution, and technology, it's like the closer you can have with that like the synergies between those two, the better.
And not making too many assumptions as a product person. Oh, nobody's going to buy that. If somebody's going to buy that, it's so difficult to know. Like that's such a fine line.
And the last thing I'd say is that the other challenge you can have is when you're working with enterprises, it's very easy for one or two key customers, big customers, early customers to really drive your roadmap. And you got to be so careful and making sure that this is not a custom product that you've built just for, big company X, but that you're actually building it for a market that's much bigger.